My name's Aidan McCullen. I am the host of The Innovation Show and the author of Undisruptable, a Mindset of Permanent Reinvention for organizations, individuals, and life. On today's episode, we're going to talk about so many things, including the power in the pain of disruption, the pain of transformation, how I looked into that pain to see what were some hints for the future, how I reinvented myself from being a very poor athlete, last picked on the playground, into being visible from being that invisible kid, and then how to reinvent myself after my career in professional rugby into the real world as a consultant, as a lecturer, as an author, and more. We're also going to talk about no matter where you are in an organization, you can lead. You don't need to wait for direction. You can do small things, small initiatives, where you can create small successes. When you have a success, it's easier to sell success than it is to sell an idea throughout the organization. People will take notice. We're also going to talk about how to be undisruptable in an organization when the organization becomes less intelligent. When the organization goes to crisis mode, it's going to be thinking all over the place, not very clearly. You can be the one who has built capability before you need it in order to be undisruptable. We're going to talk about so much more. Stay tuned for another great episode with Dov Barron.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Barron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Barron. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Barron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Barron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives. I'm your host, Dov Barron. I'm here to assist you tapping into the one thing in your business that changes everything by transforming meaning into action. Curious to know more? Simply go to dovbarron.com. That's DOVBARON.com. We are at a moment in time where borders are changing, economies are changing, leadership, business, and the workforce are all changing. Yet we resist change until it is upon us. And when it does descend upon us, everything we hold about ourselves as true is suddenly disrupted. But what if you could be undisruptable? What might happen if you got ahead of the need to change and reinvented yourself right now? Well, more about that in a moment. As always, we need your help in staying relevant. So please do us a favor. Get over to wherever it is that you tune into, iTunes or wherever it is, or Google Cast or whatever you might be. Do us a favor. Rate, review, and subscribe to the show. I really appreciate that. It makes a big difference to us. We do really appreciate it. And hey, every now and then we do a special shout out to our new subscribers. So thank you for that, and for the people who leave reviews. If you are a regular listener, big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners. And we are honored and grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. By the way, I know you're curious. I'm Dov Barron. I am your host. All right, let's dive right in. Our guest for the next 2 episodes is Aidan McCullen. He is the best-selling author of Undisruptable, a Mindset of Permanent Reinvention for individuals, organizations, and life. Aidan is also the host and founder of The Innovation Show, a hugely popular podcast in Europe and around the world, a big following in America now as well, and with some pretty amazing guests. Aidan is a change consultant, executive coach. He works with organizational teams to improve how they engage in innovation. Aidan McCullen plays over 100 times for Europe's most successful rugby teams and also represented Ireland in international games. He went on to reinvent his own career after playing rugby. After working in the digital transformation and innovation, today he sits on the board of National Broadband Ireland, rolling out connectivity to the most remote parts of Ireland. He develops and delivered a module for emerging technology trends for Trinity College Business School, which is ranked #1 in Europe. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and help me to welcome the undisruptable Aidan McCullen.
That's the best intro I've ever had, man. I'm glad you received it from my mother. It's brilliant. Great to be with you, Dov.
We wanted you to feel like you're playing Wembley or somewhere, you know?
Oh, yeah, man. Those were the days.
How old were you when you retired from rugby?
So I totally finished when I was 33, and I was finished as a pro at 31. Yeah.
You were old.
Yeah, probably old compared to guys these days, although they're lasting
when I
longer.
Think about those guys, they're usually very young, you know, and they have a short lifespan. They got to try and do well in that short lifespan because it's so competitive. So you must have been bloody good to last that long.
I don't know, man. I hung in there. It took me a while to get onto the pitch in the first place. So once I was there, I was injured quite a lot as well. We'll get into all that later on, but it was a great experience.
So let's start here. We're talking about meaning. The show and my whole work is about meaning and where we find meaning and how we sort of distill meaning for ourselves. Human beings are meaning-driven machines. What is the origin story of what gives your life meaning?
Well, I think you learn that as you go, and it's constantly unfolding. And when I think back to how it makes sense to me, I think that's what really, it just makes sense. All the crappy things that happen, all the good things that happen, and the way you connect the dots kind of makes sense. And when I look back, it's the idea of transformation and change, the way you introduced today's episode. Really, I love that. And I'm one of these people who are dopamine driven, always looking for change, and probably become kind of bored and uneasy and don't sit very easily when things are stagnant and not changing. And when I look back, that probably started as a kid, because I wasn't a very successful athlete as a kid. I was always last picked, so I was constantly the kid they'd try and get onto the other team, so the other team would lose. So my first transformation was that into an athlete. So I was a late bloomer. I was around 15, 16, started to train really hard, started to focus on a vision for the future. And that really drove me, that idea of purpose and meaning. That gave me kind of feedback loop. And I was lucky in that in Ireland, unfortunately, a lot of young men discover alcohol around that age. And I discovered this purpose and meaning in sport, and I really went for it. And really what happened, I'm going to be totally honest here. I think a lot of good players fell aside and disappeared, and I was last man standing. So I got into professional rugby mainly through actually college, because I got an opportunity to play in France, and I speak French and German, and I identified a club that I had lost lots of players, and I approached them via an agent, and I got there, and that was the start of this magnificent career journey that I had. And so that was my first transformation. And I'll fast forward then to the end. So at the end, the biggest transformation is from the player into the working world, into the real world, because so many people cling to the identity that they'd created, or as I say in the book, they become the jersey. Yep. And I was injured quite a lot at the end, and that gave me a bit of pause to kind of go, I need to build new capabilities for the future here before I need them, because by the time I need them, it's going to be too late.
All right, I want to get into that a little bit. I want to get into that and break that down a bit as we move into the show. But let's go back a bit, because I think we got to go back to the origin here. So, you talked about being this non-athlete, last picked, and then suddenly becoming an athlete. That's not something that happened. That's way too movie star stuff, right? It's woke up one day. No, there's, I believe, it's my belief that most people's transformation comes from pain. There's some kind of like I always say that I really don't care about your aha moments. Aha moments are ways for us to feel good about ourselves, but they don't actually change anything. What usually happens is an effort moment, which is, I can't bear this anymore. Something has to change. And that's actually the origin story of meaning. What was that for you? Was it that moment that transformed you from the last kid picked to wanting to train hard, or was it something else?
So firstly, bravo. I think you're absolutely right. And I think the more you come through the pain, the bigger the transformation as well. So there's a correlation there. But for me, I think it was that if I go really right back, I remember some specific instances where my friends were on the higher graded team. So when they started to stream teams, and I was left on the lower, and I was only there because to play with my friends, and they were over there on the other pitch, and sometimes even not even on the same grounds as me. That was difficult when you think back. So
yeah,
then what I discovered really, and this is where ego comes into it, and I know you look a lot inside the person to kind of peel away what's on the outside, where I wasn't known for anything really. And once you start getting known for something, and it was like people started to pay attention to me when I was a sports player. And the higher up I went, the more people paid attention to me. So you can become addicted to that. And that's really dangerous. And I think that's one of the things guys have a lot of difficulty in letting go of. But really, Dov, the most amazing one that happened to me, because I do a lot of exec coaching, and I look in the mirror at myself as well a lot. And what I noticed, because I have kids now, was that, and this dawned on me during the COVID pandemic, was that I do really try to focus on them and give them as much time when they want me around, because they'll outgrow that pretty quickly. And that's part of the job as well, to let them go and get them to a period of time. But I realized during my own period of growth as a kid, I never got that pat on the back from my own parents to go, you did great, well done. And I went, that's why I keep looking for this next thing and keep getting driven. And you're constantly looking for that pat on the back, and it didn't come. And all those things put into the mixing bowl became the recipe for this. And that was a really useful exercise, because it stopped me looking for pats on the back for things. I was just like kind of going, just get on with it and do it for yourself. And
I can certainly understand that from a psychological point of view, that human beings, we need validation. It doesn't matter who you are, you need validation. And you suddenly find that in an environment, i.e. sports. But I still don't know. You're still running around it, and I'm still going to nail you to it. What's the catalyst? What is the pain that makes you realize? Is it that, is it the moment of standing on the sidelines and watching your mates go off and like going, oh my God, I'm isolated, I'm separated, I'm not part of the gang? Or was it something else that got you to that?
It's probably a bit of both, where and actually you are getting to the source here, I suppose. And I haven't been asked this before, so great question and great questioning.
Thank you.
Is I should be paying you, man, for this counseling. But
I'll send you a bill later.
the idea that you were the last picked and all that can be hurtful,
of course.
And some people listening will have been that person.
Yep.
And it's almost like you're invisible. And now all of a sudden you're visible, but not only are you visible, people are seeking you out.
Yeah.
And that reversal is kind of like, aha, now I'm somebody, which is all ego, you see. So I realized that, but it was painful.
Yeah, I think it's really important to recognize that pain is a great catalyst. I mean, we're all going to avoid it. And it brings us into your book. We're all going to avoid pain, but it is the greatest catalyst for change. No real change, no real innovation takes place in a bull market, right? We're on the brink of a recession as we record this, and everybody's a bit, everybody's shinky's a bit tight, and everybody's panicking a little bit. And this is when innovation will take place. And, it's like, we got to remove 1/3 of the workforce. We better get innovative or else we're going to die. Whereas it's fine. It's not so bad. It's all that is when we're in a boom. So I think that it's understanding the value of that pain is so important. And that brings us to your book, which I think is an important book, Undisruptable, because these things, as I spoke about in the introduction, disrupt us, whether it's economies, whether it's recessions, whether it's political power, whether it's the threat of some multinational taking over or whatever it might be, or your competitor suddenly has done an Aidan McCullen and come out of nowhere and suddenly is like, oh my God, everybody's paying attention to my competitor. And all of that is pain. And it's fine to understand that it's pain, but how do you manage it is what your book is about, because you're asking people to get ahead of that. So talk to us about why Undisruptable? Why is that the title?
Yeah, so firstly, you've set me up nicely with the context that the waves of change never stop, and this, we hear this is a constant in life, but they are getting faster because the life cycle of companies is getting shorter, the lifespan of companies, and therefore the people in who work in those companies, the lifespan of their careers are getting shorter. And we're going to need more on-ramps and off-ramps from education to the workforce, etc. And oftentimes, like I was saying at the end of my career, when the rug is pulled from under your feet, you want to have another rug, even a little bit of a rug there in place, so you're not totally caught off guard. So you got to always be on top of your game, particularly because of these changing, the changing times we're in. And I think this is a really important point to grasp for everyone, is that when you're in a moment of crisis, your brain changes. So we know this from neuroscience, that blood is diverted from your forebrain to your fists for fight and your feet for flight. You literally become less intelligent. So for anybody who's had those moments where you're gone in to talk to your boss to ask for that raise, or you're going to give somebody a piece of your mind and you forget loads of things, you go back to your desk 20, 30 minutes later, it all comes flooding back and you're like, God damn it, I forgot to say X, Y, Z. That was because you were in fight or flight mode. Yes. And in organizations, all an organization is a bunch of people coming together, hopefully for a common cause, and they go into fight or flight mode. And then if the leadership of the organization gets into fight or flight mode, decision making is flawed, and you're going to be less open to the mistakes that are symbiotic with innovation. Because when you try things, you're going to stumble your way towards success. 93% of organizations don't end up with the product that they started out to deliver. So this is common, to be able to be pivoting and be able to iterate time and time again. So we need to have this kind of mindset that's open to the changes that come with innovation. So the idea of being
pause that, because I think you made an important point. So this is important for all of us to listen to. You've all had the experience of being in a fight or flight situation. You've all had the experience, whether it was at school and you had an exam and you sat down the exam and you were suddenly dumber than a stick, and then you walked away and you're having your lunch and you knew all the answers. We've all had that. That's the prefrontal cortex is now offline, which is this thinking part of your brain. 27% of the blood flow to that goes away under stress. So you're now 27% dumber. It's not you, it's all of us. Now, what Aidan's point is this. If your company is in a fight or flight stressful situation, then the company is 27% dumber. And so you're not going to be operating at your most innovative, your most creative, or your certainly anything that's going to give you what it is that you need. So it's really vital that you can move yourself out of that fight or flight state, number one. But even better is to find ways around it before it hits you in the head. And that's really what you're talking about here, is being preemptive. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And the term I use is build capability before you need it.
Yes.
And that can be the most basic thing, like try a new course or, start working part-time at something, take a free online course, follow Dov's podcast and learn from the guests that are on the podcast. Whatever it is, build new capability before you need it, because when you need it, it's going to be too late because of that being 7% less intelligent. Yeah. And you can't think straight. And that's why oftentimes when people don't see the disruption coming, maybe are made redundant, and then they panic and they go to a job, and then 6 months later they're out of that job because it was a panic move. It was a Hail Mary pass of a move. And that's what happens in organizations. They make these.
What happens in relationships, Aidan?
Exactly.
People get
when it's
dumped,
too late,
they're heartbroken, and they end up in another reactive relationship and going, how the hell did I end up in this relationship? I mean, you've got to, these things are all metaphors for our life. Everything is an example of everything. And so if you've done that in pattern in relationships, that's what you do in business. That's what you've been doing in friendships. This is what you do in everything. It's a reactive. And so what this book is about getting you out of the reactive and recognizing you've got to, as you just said so beautifully, you've got to build the capabilities before you need it. Is that right?
Absolutely. And I love what you said about relationship, because you think about relationships, and we've all done this. I've done this, hand up, mea culpa, was
me too.
Focus on work, because you know what, my kids are young, they won't miss me being around. I'll focus on work in those early days and really double down on the job and, give them a nice nest. And you're not around for them or your spouse or your partner. And then they'll forgive you in the early days. They'll give you a bit of leeway. But then you become addicted to the work loop and delivering whatever you're delivering, because it's like, you know what, this is important too. And then all of a sudden, maybe you go and you make your fortune, you become financially secure, you go back to the family and they don't want to know about you anymore. And that's why, and you mentioned it in the title is about organizations, individuals, and life, because they're all the same thing. And as Dov said, they're all metaphors for one another. And you constantly see these things appear time and time again. One of the great ways to think about this, I think, is one day I came home and my kids it was the time I was giving them a bath. I came home to give the kids a bath. So they were 14
and 16?
They are now. No, I wouldn't they wouldn't allow me. So,
I'm sure they wouldn't. I hope they wouldn't.
Exactly. And so I came home to give him a bath, and my older son was, he must have been whatever the time he'd tolerate to get me give him a bath. And I was putting my hand in, the shirt sleeve pulled up, dipping in the water to make sure, check the temperature, and I start waving the water left and right to put in the soap to get it to mix up and create bubbles. And I noticed just the way the wave worked. And I said, and I tortured the poor kids with this stuff. I called them in, I said, boys, come in and see this. And I showed them the way that the wave it's the same body of water, but there's a wave and there's a crest and a trough at the same time. And it just keeps changing, trough, crest, trough. I was like, boys, do you see that? That's the same water, same body of water. And that's like life. There's always highs and lows. And the problem is when you're in the low, in the trough, you can't see the crest coming. And when you're on the crest, all you're thinking about is the next crest. But there's a trough coming. And the lesson from this is, when you're in the trough, know that there's a crest coming.
Yes.
And then when you're at the top of the wave, know there's a trough coming, but enjoy it. So do enjoy it. Be grateful for it, but know that it's going to change quickly. And that's the whole idea. You got to be ready for the next trough, because it's going to come. And that's what happened during the pandemic. During the pandemic, people were like, oh, I can't wait for this to be over. And then a load of other stuff happens. So the Ukraine happens. Then the recession, the slowdown starts to happen. And people were like kind of going, phew, that's over. Instead of, okay, I've got a warning shot across my bow. I need to actually build up capabilities here for the next time this is going to happen. And those kind of pandemics or those type of crises are going to happen quicker and quicker and in closer succession
Of
than at
course.
any other time. And that's
Yes.
what I really want to get across to people, to prepare themselves so they're not in the fight or flight 27% less intelligent mode when it does hit.
So let's talk about reinvention, because it's a mindset for permanent reinvention is the sort of part of the byline of the book. And I think that's kind of one of those nebulous statements that's thrown around. Like, what does that mean? Reinvent myself. I'm not sure what that means. And, do I cut off a leg? Like, people are confused by that. And we talked about in the intro that you reinvented yourself from being the athlete to being the business consultant guy. Talk to us about what reinvention means to you, and how can we grasp what it actually means, what it needs to mean to all of us, rather than waiting for it to be a crisis.
So, as opposed to innovation, I used the term reinvention for a wide variety of reasons. One of them is that when you use the word innovation in a company, very few people know what that means. And it means different things to different people. It's all subjective based on their experiences, etc. But it does mean something new. And if you look at the fusion of innovations theory, it was introduced by a guy called Everett Rogers. He says if you take 100 people, 2.5 of them are going to be excited. So 2.5% of people will be excited by the term innovation. These are the type of people who'll queue around for the very first iPhone release all the way around the corner. Then you have a different distribution. You have these early adopters, middle majority, later adopters, and then these laggards, these 16% of people who won't change no matter what you do.
Yeah.
So using a term like innovation alienates a huge population of a group of people. So the word reinvention suggests that you've already invented something. You just need to reiterate or you need to change that. You need to reinvent it. And I think the best way to think about this is through the metaphors I use in the book. There's one that I used, and I was again corrected by my kids who were so helpful during the book. I used initially the idea of the phoenix, this mythical creature that every 500 years willingly walks into the flames, burns itself up, and from the ashes gathers what was useful from its previous incarnation in order to earn the right to go and live another life cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And that in it has lots of lessons. So you have to willingly burn yourself up and from the ashes, see what's still useful to reinvent yourself, right? So, so guard that in mind. That's a lens to listen to or watch us. Then my son goes, "Hey, Dad, you talk to all these really clever people all the time. You can't be telling them about a myth. You're going to need something real." So I was like, from the mouths of babes, I'll do what the kid says here. So I found a brilliant metaphor in something that's used ad nauseum, but I'd never seen the science behind it, which is the transformation from the caterpillar to the butterfly. Yeah, there's a reason there's butterfly.
I love it for that same reason.
Yeah, and there's reasons there's butterflies on all these books about change, but I had never read about the science behind it. It's absolutely phenomenal. So here's how it goes. The very first act when the caterpillar emerges from its shell is it turns to the shell and eats it to fuel what it's going to become in the future. So using what it used to be in order to fuel what it's going to be. Then it goes through a period of incremental growth, eating multiple times its own body weight and removing its outer skin as it grows bigger and bigger and bigger, incremental growth. But then at a specific point in the life cycle, these beautiful discs, these beautiful cells deep within the DNA of the caterpillar come online. They're called imaginal discs. And imaginal comes from the word imagination, beautifully. And they resonate at a frequency so different than that of the immune system of the caterpillar that the caterpillar's immune system recognizes them as a foreign body and attacks them. Think for those guys, you change makers out there working in organizations, the exact same as the corporate immune system attacking you. But the imaginal discs start to come together and eventually overpower the immune system and signal a bigger change. So the caterpillar is induced to go and become the chrysalis. The chrysalis is a life cycle stage as opposed to the cocoon. The cocoon is the hardened outer skin of the caterpillar. And this is where this great transformation happens, like the phoenix walking into the flames. An enzyme is released inside the cocoon, and it melts down the caterpillar into this soupy, gloopy fuel that's going to fuel its future becoming. 2 last phases, and the reason I say 2 here is when I'm giving presentations and workshops, I have this brilliant artist, Dov, and she creates beautiful slides for me, and she sent me 2 options for the very final stage, and I said, no, we got to keep both. So the first is when the caterpillar emerges from the cocoon, or when the butterfly emerges from the cocoon, it clings to what's left of the cocoon, which, by the way, is the outer skin, the shriveled outer skin of what it used to be.
Yep.
And when I saw that, I go back to letting go of being a player or letting go of being a parent when kids empty nest, or whether it's letting go of an old career or an identity you've created. I saw that as a moment of gratitude, looking into that shell of what you used to be and say thanks, and including all the painful pieces that we opened with today. The painful parts are part of the process. And then the final phase was that you got to let go of that and be able to fly into the future. And there's so many lessons of any transformation in there, the letting go, the pain, the resistance, oftentimes from those people who it's in their best interest for them to help you, but they don't.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the way Maya Angelou talks about this, the great poet and Nobel laureate. She said, we delight in the beauty of the butterfly, but rarely admit the changes it has gone through to achieve that beauty. And that's exactly what this concept of reinvention is. And you know what? You could just read that chapter and then there's case studies throughout the book, including individuals and organizations, but that really encapsulates the difficulty in transformation.
Yeah, it's a beautiful metaphor. I use that metaphor, and the reason there's a piece in it there that I use that I love to put forward to the ego that's listening, because the ego's always listening, and that is, if you watch that whole process, you'll notice on the top is a little black thing. On the very top of that thing is a little black thing. And people go, and I say, do you know what that is? And they go, no. And I go, that's the head. And it's the last thing to fall off.
Wow.
How much are you clinging to your head, to your rational, logical, rather than just allowing yourself to be with this process of transformation, which will require you to get rid of the head part of you that's saying, I've got to cling on to everything that was, and I've got to move forward. And even in my private work with clients, I'll say, there's a cycle of this that is change, and you've come in and you've been a successful caterpillar, and you're going to become a butterfly, but there's going to be a period where you're going to be soup. You've got mush inside. You're just going to be soup. And when you're soup, you won't know what you are. And you have to decide if you're going to die as soup, because you can't go back to being a caterpillar. So you're going to die as soup, or you're going to go through whatever it is to become the butterfly. And that's why I love that metaphor. And I love that in the book. I thought it was a great metaphor. And I feel like you've laid it out better than, because people use it. Oh, caterpillar, it's a butterfly, but they don't really understand or lay it out the way that you've done it. And it's a really sort of taking those steps for people to understand, oh, I'm at this phase. I'm at this phase. Like, it's not you're here and then you're there. It's not you're a caterpillar, then you're a butterfly. You've laid out these phases so well that it allows people to understand that transformation that takes place. It's beautifully done. We're going to come back into all that. We want to talk more about these transformation processes. We want to talk about failing forward. We want to talk about the difficulties of change and really look at why we like this idea of failing forward is something that's sort of used But again, I think you laid it out and played it better in your book in a way of understanding from your own stories as well. So we're going to come back. We're going to talk more about that with Aidan McCullen in part 2 of the show and this delicious conversation. But before we do, Aidan, please tell everybody where they can find out more about you, about your book, and about all of your resources, and the way they can find out about your podcast and all those things.
Thank you, Dov. Yeah, so you can find me probably best on LinkedIn. I have a newsletter on LinkedIn. I release excerpts of the show and any type of updates. And then the show is on theinnovationshow.io. And the reason it's .io is because of input, output. I read books and then, like Dov, try and put an output of those books, all the information that I've taken in. And the book is on Amazon. You can find it on Amazon anywhere in the world.
Fabulous. And we'll make sure that, of course, that we post all of the links to all of the show and the books, etc., in the show notes. Listen, we're going to be back for part 2 of our delicious conversation with the author of Undisruptable, Aidan McCullen, in just one click. Stay curious, my friends. Stay curious about why you may need to reinvent now before you need to reinvent. Stay curious, my friends. Stay curious.